Well, good Monday morning, everyone. I am David, and I am your chaplain here at Progressive, and this is this week's Monday's Motivation. For this morning, I want us to go to the book of 1 Chronicles. We're going to be in 1 Chronicles 29, and we're going to look at one verse. We're going to look at verse 5. But to understand what's going on, the context behind 1 Chronicles 29 is that King David is getting ready to die, and he is gathering all the material that's going to be needed to build the temple. And the temple is extremely important in the Old Testament. It is where God's local presence dwelled among his people, with his people. This is where the God of the universe would dwell with his people, was inside this temple, or would be inside this temple when it was built. David wouldn't build the temple, but he would gather all the materials, and Solomon would later build the temple. But in chapter 29, David is talking about, as king, how he's gathered through the government resources all of these materials that were needed. And then out of his own treasury, he's also given toward God in the temple in a free, in a willingly way. And so in verse 5, he offers this challenge to his leaders and to the people of Israel. He says, "Who then will offer himself willingly, consecrating himself today as to the Lord?" And so David is saying, hey, who's gonna fall in line with me? Who's gonna imitate what I did and offer themselves willingly, consecrating himself? So the question, I guess the first question is, what does consecrating mean? Well, in the Hebrew language, which is what the Old Testament was primarily written in, this word is used in the intensive form. And what it means is David is saying, who is going to offer all of himself, not holding anything back, but you're going to put it all out there. In fact, in our sports culture, we would say, who's going to leave it all out on the field? Who's going to give everything that they are willingly? And it's not just we're giving it to some random occurrence or random event. No, it's to the Lord. We're going to consecrate ourselves to the Lord. That's what David's challenge was to his people. He's saying, hey, who is going to offer themselves in the same way that I have, and we're going to offer ourselves to the Lord. We're not going to hold anything back. Everything is God's. Well, in the New Testament, we have a verse that is very, very similar to that. The Apostle Paul says in Romans chapter 12, verse 1, he says, "Present your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship." Paul says, hey, do the same thing. Offer your living body. Die to yourself. Don't hold anything back from following Jesus. You know, the only problem with a living sacrifice is that we often crawl off the altar, don't we? You know, what's holding you back from giving everything, from leaving it all on the field, for dying to self and living to Christ? What's holding you back today from being that presence of God around the people that need Him, that need to see Him, that need to know that He loves them? What's holding you back from leaving it all out on the field? Well, I hope you guys will think about that, maybe even talk about that today, and that you'll have an awesome, a safe, and a productive work week.